and welcome to Sarah's Stamping Retreat. Today we're going to be using this Garden Delight stamp set from Altenew to create 5 cards using layering stamps, and we're going to use them in the way that they're supposed to be used, and then we're going to explore some different ways to use them as well. So this is a big stamp set. You'll have to excuse me, I've taken all of the stamps off so that I can use them for the video, but you can get a good idea from here what it is. It's essentially two flowers, this bigger one here, this smaller one here, and 2 sets of leaves. This set is 2 leaves and this set's 1 leaf. And then you've got warm hugs, hello, I appreciate your support, sending hugs and happy thoughts, and sending love. And just to give you a better idea as well of the stamp set, it actually comes with this, which gives you ideas of how to use it. So there are 4 different ideas of how you could use the stamp set. This one is using the stamp set we're using today and a different stamp set with it. And then it also has a layering guide, so it shows you how to layer them. So I'll pop that just there for our first card. So I'll reference that so that you can see what I'm doing. So for my first card, I'm going to use the stamps in the way they're supposed to. So we'll do this top stamp first. So let me try and line it up the same way that they have it so that you can see what I'm doing. So you can see this is just a piece of cardstock that I've used. It's actually some Nina Solar White cardstock. I've used it for projects before, so I'm just doing it on this. So I use my Altenew Jet Black Crisp Ink for the first layer, and then I'm going to mix up some yellows. So I've got this Citrus Burst from Altenew, which I got in this summer sherbet pack, but you can buy it separately or in different sets. So I'm going to use that as my first layer. It's quite a bright yellow. And then you can see on here that they've suggested that you try and line up that edge there, and that edge there. So for me, that's this edge, and this edge. So we're going to pop it on. So that just adds a block level of colour with that one. So then I'm all for using what you have. So I've also got some Stampin' Up colours. So I've got So Saffron and Daffodil Delight. So I'm going to start with the So Saffron for the next layer. And it can be easier if you've got, like, say for example, Altenew do nice sets of inks that come in 4, so it's 4 different yellows together. So that does make it easier because they're made so you've got a light, a mid light, a mid dark and a dark. But when you don't have those to hand, then you make do. So that's what I'm doing today. So here I'm looking to line up this corner, and this corner. So I'm just making sure that I know where those are. So for me that's this, and this. So I'm just lining those up. So that was the So Saffron. And then I'm going to do Daffodil Delight. And on this piece, we're looking for these bits. So I can see that this bit is this pointy bit, and then I've got this bit and this bit. So I'm going to line those up. And you can see how much depth we're starting to get in this flower now. And then I'm actually going to do this piece and this piece in the jet black. And with these pieces, you just want to angle them so they work with your flower. And there's our flower, and you can see how much nice detailing we've got in that, and that's the beauty of these layering stamps. You get lots of lovely details, and it would take a lot of time to colour those details by hand. So then I'm going to use the same colours for the other flowers. So I'm going to stamp 3 flowers in total, 1 of these and 2 of these. I don't know whether I'll use them all just yet, but we'll see. So I'm going to stamp 2 of these simultaneously. I don't want to stamp them too close together because I want to die cut them out. I'm just going to stamp this one again because I've got some bit of smudge there. Then this first layer I'm going to do with Citrus Burst again. I'm going to use the exact same colours as before. And you can see on here we're looking for this piece, and this piece. So that is this here, and this here. I love how vibrant the citrus burst colour is. And like I said, I would use whatever you've got, if you've got the colour of inks that you want. But I'll put in the description the set of yellows that goes with this, so that you can see those as well in case you don't have any yellows at home. And obviously a set is easier to use. Then I'm going in with the So Saffron. And you can see on this one we're lining up those 3 areas again. And then in with the Daffodil Delight. And with this one there's no specific lines to line up, but I think the shape is kind of, if you look at it as almost a bit of a triangle, it's a bit flatter on this side, so I like to line up the flatter bit on the middle of this stamp with the inside of it. And there's actually 2 pieces to go in the middle of this, a larger one and a smaller one, but I don't really use that smaller one. There is an added bit of detail if you did want to use it. I'm just going to use this larger one, and I'm just going to stamp it in the black in the middle. So then I'm going to use this set of greens for the leaves, but I actually only need 3 colours to fill in the leaves. So I'm going to take out the moss, and I'm going to use the bamboo, parrot and olive for these ones. So I'm going to do this double, and I'm going to do a couple of singles. I don't really know what I'm going to use yet. I'm just going to go with it and see what happens. So you can see this on here, how to layer it. I'm hoping that having done these you can see what I'm doing in terms of lining them up. And on these it's the yellow bits that we're lining up. So I'm not going to show you step by step, but if you do need further guidance, then you get a layering guide in the stamp set. And there's also tutorials on the Altenew website as well, so I'll link to some of those below as well. So I'm going to go with the bamboo first. So that'll be for this and this layer, so the solid layers. So then I'm going to use Parrot for the next layers, this one and this one. And actually the Parrot will be the final layer on this single one, because you can see there's only 2 colours inside that one. And then I'll just use the olive for the final layer of the double leaf. And then I've got the coordinating Garden Delights die set, so I'm going to use that to die cut out these flowers. And I'm sure most of you have used stamps with coordinating die sets before, but in case you haven't, all you need to do is just pop them around there, tape them down and pop them through your die cutting machine. So then I've got all my die cut pieces. So then I've got a 5.5 by 4.25 top folding card blank, and this is the colour block triangle stencil from Altenew. You can see mine's well loved. I've used this in classes. You'll be able to find quite a few videos on my channel using this, so it has been well loved. But it doesn't matter that it looks a bit discoloured, still works fine. And I actually kind of like it when my stencils go a bit discoloured, because it shows that I've got my money's worth from them. So then I'm going to use these 3 Stampin' Up! Inks. So I've got Smoky Slate, Grey Granite and Basic Grey. And I forgot to pop a piece of scrap paper behind here, so let's pop that down now. I'm going to use the Smoky Slate, and I'm going to go all the way over the stencil with the Smoky Slate first. And then I can just lift up one side of this just to make sure I'm happy, which I am. You can see using the blending brush with the stencil is really nice because it creates these kind of more defined shapes. It's not quite flat. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my paper tape, and I'm just going to mask off some little sections. And this is where you can be a little bit strategic as well, because you can see there are a couple of places, like just here and just here, where I had a bit of ink on my hand and I got it on there. So I'm going to make it so that those areas get the darkest grey on them to kind of blend those bits out. I'm using quite a lot of tape here, but I will use it again afterwards for my die cutting. So then these 3 areas that I've masked off to there, I'm going to fill in with grey granite ink. And then I'm going to move these. And then I'm going to use my basic grey. And when I've just lifted that off, I feel like this area here needs something, so I'm just going to do this top little area here. So then I've got my background, and that's then ready for me to just arrange my flowers on. So then I've cut this Celebrate from this Magical Birthday Boy Designer Die set. And I've cut it 3 times from black cardstock, so I'm going to glue those together to give it a bit more dimension. So I'm going to leave these in place, and I'm going to just glue those leaves down. And then I'm going to pop some dimensionals behind here. And when I was putting that on, I decided I didn't really like the placement of this, so I've taken that off and I'm just going to glue it back on again. I've played around a bit with the placement of my sentiment, and I think I like it best at the bottom. I would normally put it above the flowers, but for this one I think it looks a bit better down further towards the bottom. And then I've got some of these Nouveau drops in buttermilk, and I'm just going to dot some of those around. So there's my first card finished. So then for my next card, I've already stamped these flowers because I wanted to show you what they look like in all different colours. Well, I've just done it the same way as I did last time. I had originally intended to do them so they didn't have a black outline but a darker shade of the same colours of the flowers. So that is another way to use your stamps, but I decided a black outline would look better for this card. So we'll use the stamps in different ways for the next 3 cards, but for this one we're going to leave it like that, which is why I've already done the stamping. So this one I've done with the same colours as I did the last card. For the top one I've used this selection of inks, so Pinkalicious, Rubellite and Razzleberry. And then for the orange one I used Orange Cream, Fire Brick and Autumn Blaze. So then I want to blend a bit of ink onto the background, and I want to use the lightest colour of each of the flowers to do that with. So I'm going to start at the bottom with the Citrus Burst. And then the next colour I'm going to use is this Sunkissed. I'm actually going to use the cards that I've created for this video as some of my submissions for my ACP course. I've not talked about it for a while. It's an Altenew educator program course that I'm doing kind of bit by bit, and so these cards are all for modules of the course. Even though they're kind of modules of the course, they are actually individual courses themselves as well that you can take. They're not too expensive. I'll link them below if you want to take any of them. This one that I'm doing here, I'm doing for my homework for a course called Polychromatic, which is just really about using lots of different colours. So I just wanted to make this card really bright. And then for the top one, I'm going to use this Pinkalicious. Now I've just made sure just to take any excess ink off my brush before I've used them on here, because I'm using the same brush for all three colours. I actually realised that this Pinkalicious wasn't the lightest colour of this. I think I actually used the Pink Diamond as the lightest colour previously, but the other colours have come up a bit brighter when I've blended them on. So actually it does kind of fit with the other colours anyway, so it's probably not a bad thing. I actually really like the way that's looking now. So I'm just going to place these back on so I can decide what I want to do with my sentiment. And I'm going to use my stamp positioner for this just in case I don't stamp it correctly the first time, because I don't want to ruin all of that blending. So I'm going to ink that out with my Crisp Jet Black ink. And I actually use this as my main black ink because I like that it's very black, and like the name says, it is very crisp. Gives a nice impression. I'm going to stamp that one more time just to make sure it's super black. That happy birthday sentiment, by the way, is from another Altenew set. I think it's called Birthday Wishes. I've used it on here quite a lot, but I'll link it below so that if you're interested you can see. I like the way that looks, so I'm going to stick it down now. I'm gluing down all the leaves first. And then I've got Nouveau drops, I've got the buttermilk that we used for the last one, I've got ripened pumpkin, and I've got carnation pink, and I'm going to use those around the flowers. And then there we go, that's our second card finished. Now for my next card, I've stamped out the flowers as I did on the first card, but I've used a dark grey, so I've used the basic grey from Stampin' Up to do the outline, so it's a little bit softer than the first card. And then I've used a technique which I learnt in the Beautiful Details class from Altenew, which I'll link below. And actually it's a technique that I've never done before, so I really wanted to give it a go. And that is to layer up your stamps and then to add some detail with your pens or your pencils or whatever afterwards. So it takes some of the work out of the colouring, but you get more depth. So you can see here, I've done some of them already. So I've done this one, but I haven't done that one. So you can see the difference in them. This one has a little bit more depth. And again, in the leaves, this one and this one are the ones that I've only stamped, and then I've added some extra detail to these. So I thought I'd just add some extra detail with you now. So I am by no means a colourist, but I do enjoy colouring. So I'm just using kind of the lines that are already there for me and just adding a little bit of detail. So I'm not going all the way up to those areas, I'm kind of staying within those areas and just adding an extra level of depth to those colours. And I'm going to do the same in this one as well. And the colour that I'm using here, it's an Altenew marker and it is called Butternut. It's from this Space Garden set, so I'm going to use the butternut and the pumpkin pie on this. And I do actually really love my Altenew markers. I think they're probably my favourite markers, and I do have most markers from several brands. I've got some Copics, I've got Stampin' Up ones, I've got some Arteza ones. I've tried different ones for different reasons throughout kind of my crafting life, but I think these are my favourite, partly because they've got two really usable nibs. So I really like the brush end of the Copics, but the other end is a chisel nib end, which I never actually use, but I do use this fine nib end on here. So that is the main reason why I prefer these. and also the ink just seems to flow really nicely out of them, which to be fair is the same with the Copics. The Copics would probably be my second favourite, and to be fair it's quite fine between them, but I think these just have the edge because they just have that really lovely fine nib end instead of the chisel nib end that I've got on mine. I know that Copic do a lot of different types of markers, so I'm purely saying that versus the Chow, which are the ones that I've got, but I do really love these markers. So these greens are from this Island Garden set. So I've got the Hunter Green, the Just Green and the Sweet Leaf here. And again, I'm just kind of going over a bit of the colouring. These obviously aren't the same kind of tones that I used previously for the stamping, but they actually do go quite nicely. So I'm just kind of like blending them over. And I think that you can see that that extra little bit of colouring has actually really added some depth and dimension to those. So I'm going to go and cut those out. So for this card I'm going to use a 5.5 by 4.25 card that folds this way. And I'm going to use my Saltwater Taffy Distress Oxide ink to just create a bit of a background. I'm going to put most of the colour in the centre and just kind of blend out a little bit from there. Now I'm going to use my basic grey to stamp that. So then I'm going to glue these down. And then I'm going to pop a few foam pads behind the centre one. And then I think I'm just going to add a few of these buttermilk and Nouveau drops again. And then there's my finished card. Then for my next card, I've got a top folding yellow card blank. That's an A6 card blank. So it measures 4 1/8 by 5 7/8 inches. And I've got a piece of grey granite cardstock from Stampin' Up that is 1/2 inch smaller than the card front, and I've used the second one of these Essential Glimmer rectangles from Spellbinders to hot foil this gold pattern around the edge. I'm not going to do that on camera, but I'll link below a video that will show you how to do that if you're interested. So then for this one I'm going to use my crisp black ink to stamp this big flower stamp, and then I'm going to just stamp the leaf a few times. And with this one I'm going to use those markers that I've already used to just colour the stamps, because I think sometimes when things are presented to us in a certain way, like this is a layering stamp set, we kind of think, okay, well we've got to layer it, but actually we can just colour it the same as any of our other stamps, and that's a really nice thing to do sometimes. So I've got this navy blue which is called Dark Night from the same set of colours, and actually you can see it's kind of such a dark blue that it's almost black. And then I'm going to go in with my lightest colour, which is the butternut, and I'm going to lay that all over. And then I'm going to go in with my darkest colour, which is this silicon amber. I'm just going to put in a few little details with there. And the next darkest is the yellow ochre. And then I've got the butternut. And with each colour I'm kind of blending further into the image. And I'm going to go back in with my lightest colour and just blend all the way over the top. And then I'm going to use a similar process with the greens. I'm going to start with the lightest colour and then add some detail with the darker colours before going back in with the lightest colour. And then while I've got my alcohol markers out, I'm going to use them to change the colour of these pearls. So I'm going to use this dark blue that I use for the centre of the flowers, the not dark night, and I'm just going to colour a few of these pearls in. And because they're alcohol markers, then you can see they give a really nice finish to these. So I'm going to go and die cut out my leaves. And then the other thing that I thought it would be nice to do is to colour a section of this paper. So then I've used that same Celebrate die that I used earlier to die cut that piece of paper that I coloured with my alcohol marker. And then I cut 2 more white pieces, so I'm going to stack those up. And I've purposefully gone for the white behind the blue because if you can see, not only lifts it up a little bit, but it also kind of offsets it a little bit. You can see a small amount of the white behind. So let's just layer up our card. Then I'm going to take my coloured pearls and pop one in the middle of my flower, and then the others I'm going to pop around. And there's that card finished. Then for my final card, I want to create some foliage. I'm not going to use all of the layers for this card. So for my leaves, I'm going to stamp just these little pieces just in green. I am going to do an outline in a minute, so it's not just going to look like this, but I don't want all the layers of colour. And then on the other leaf, I'm going to use this one, which is like essentially the second layer again. I've not used the whole kind of bottom layer, this one. And I've done both those in bamboo. I'm going to add this parrot with this piece for these double leaves. I've actually not done a very good job of that, so I'm just going to stamp them. And then I'm going to stamp the outlines in Versamarking. And then I've got this golden peach embossing powder from Altenew. I'm going to give that a go for the outline. Now I've not lined these up perfectly, but I've decided to roll with it and see how it looks. So I think it might look quite nice, kind of offset. Let's heat that up and see what it looks like. They've got quite a nice soft look to them now. So now I want to do the flowers. So again, I'm going to skip the flat layer of the flowers so you get some white to it. And I'm going to use my pink diamond ink for the first layer. And then I use Pinkalicious for the second layer. And then I'm going to do the centres in the Razzleberry. And then I'm going to emboss the outlines for these as well. So that looks really pretty. So I'm going to go cut those out with my coordinating dies. And then bringing in this scrap piece of paper again. Another way to use your stamps, I'm just going to create with the outlines like a pattern at the bottom. So I think I like the flowers across the card like that. And then I'm going to pop the sentiment under here. I'm going to heat emboss that sentiment. And I'm going to use that same pink embossing powder. I wasn't really happy with that sentiment because it's not quite straight. So I've just stamped a new sentiment onto a spare piece of cardstock. I'm just going to glue that over there. And then I'm going to lay these down, but I'm purposefully not going right to the edges, partly because I want a bit to go off the edge, and partly because I want to be able to tuck the leaves underneath, so I don't want them to be stuck down the whole way. You'll see with this as well, I've kept the foam pads in the middle so that I can tuck some leaves underneath. So now I'm just going to turn that over and I'm just going to trim those edges off. You could leave them on, but then you'll obviously need a bigger envelope. And then I'm going to use some of these Carnation Pink Nouveau drops just to finish the centres of those flowers. So then there's my completed card. Then there are all my finished cards. Let me know which one's your favourite in the comments below. You can see we've used lots of different techniques to get different looks to our flowers. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate you clicking like below, and you can also press subscribe if you'd like to see future videos. If you press the bell button and select all, then YouTube will also notify you when I have new videos available. All of the products that I've used for today's video are listed in the description below, and there's also a link there to my blog where you can find a picture supply list if that makes it easier to find what you're looking for. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see you again soon.